Landon empowers investors by making their short-term rentals hassle-free and profitable, all while giving back to the community. His innovative use of technology breaks down geographical barriers, delivering world-class experiences for both guests and owners. Let's dive into how Landon is revolutionizing the industry. Welcome, Landon Smith. Let's get started. You know, I remember the first conversation we had like several weeks ago. We met through mutual friends, and it was like an immediate click, right? It was one of those times where you're like, man, I feel like I've known you forever. And our stories are very similar. And I knew I had to get you on the podcast. And so thank you so much for joining. One of the things that impressed me the most when we first had our conversation was how you said that faith, family, and freedom was at the pinnacle or the foundation, if you will, of most of the decisions that you're making in your life today. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think that those are my core values. And I think it was back in 2014, I was in a really tough spot mentally, and got to meet with this guy who kind of really spent about 8 hours trying to get some stuff out of me. And we kind of came out with, those being my core values. And then really over the past 10 years or so, it's been trying to make shifts to where everything was in line with those values, because it's not an overnight thing, but those are the guiding principles, I guess, if you will, for the decisions that are made. And it makes it easy to say yes to things and no to other things. Doesn't make it easy to deal with what comes with those decisions necessarily, but it makes it, I guess, life is going to be hard. It can be fun and hard, or it can be miserable and hard. So.
Ooh. It's very true. It can be fun and hard and miserable and hard. I'll choose fun and hard all day long.
100%.
So you launched Air In, which is an incredible way for short-term rental owners to have somebody that can manage the full process for them and fully maximize their experience as short-term owner rentals and real estate. Let's back up a little bit and share with us, Landon, how you got into real estate in the first place. What inspired you to get into real estate?
It wasn't an inspiration per se. At the time, I was a full-time touring artist, singer-songwriter, and I had recently gotten engaged at the time. And right after I proposed to my wife, we went and met our realtor, and he is actually a former program director and DJ. So when I started talking to him about kind of what I did, his exact words were, "Man, if you can make a living as an independent musician, you do really well in real estate." And I was like, "I don't want to wear a suit and tie and all that kind of stuff." And go to an office. And he's like, "Well, you don't have to do any of that. You can wear whatever you want. You have to come to the office as long as you as long as you do your job." So there's a freedom aspect there that was interesting. But I really didn't really know what else to do. And so I decided to give it a shot. Then over the next 6 months, got my license, mostly at coffee shops in multiple states, because I still had to travel to make money as a musician. But very shortly after I got my license and I had a couple deals under my belt, I actually sold a fix and flip to one of my clients. And the seller, an investor on the other side, made a comment, asked me how long I'd been in real estate. And I said about 3 months. And he said, "You seem pretty organized on the ball." He's like, "I'm looking for a buyer's agent." And I couldn't understand why he would want someone to go find him homes and then get the commission. I'm like, "Well, wouldn't you want the commission?" He just wanted the deal. And so, by the way, my first commission check was like $451. So, but anyway, so I started working with him and I started helping him find fix and flips. And I really started to enjoy trying to find deals. And there started to be this like creative element of like, well, if I go here, I look this way, or if I look for this type of pattern, you start seeing things like that. And so I started getting referrals from people basically, saying, hey, I heard you were a guy who can find deals. And once the fix and flip market, this is in Colorado, bottom of the market, once the fix and flip market started kind of drying up, I kind of moved into finding foreclosures and, going to auctions, county auctions. And then we started doing, pop tops. And then it became finding land or scrape to build new and stuff like that, all while maintaining my normal residential business. But what was very true then and is still true now is it allowed a lot of creativity, whether it was how do we fit this property on this lot, or how do we change this layout to like fit what the market wants? How do we negotiate this deal for my client? How do we say what we need to say the right way to be able to make these things happen? There's a ton of creativity in it. And in a lot of ways, it's very much my approach, at least. It's almost like a song, you kind of, there's different songs, different feelings, talking about different things. There's not one song fits all, right? And so that's kind of how I got into investing. Bought my first rental, I think in 2011 or 12, right after I got my license. And it was a long-term rental. And so that's kind of how I got into investing per se. But as far as getting into short-term rentals, that wasn't until I think 2015. So I've been in it for about 4 or 5 years. And I was traveling back and forth from Austin to Denver.
Were you still doing, let me interject, were you still singer-songwriter / real estate guy at this point? Or was singer-songwriter, was that kind of stuff on the back burner at this point?
It was on the back burner, but I still play every day. My office feels like a dive bar, there's guitars everywhere, but like it wasn't like an identity, I guess, if you will.
Got it.
Which is an interesting question because it took a minute to get like, oh, I'm Landon the real estate guy instead of Landon the musician. It was really hard from the like identity perspective. I struggled with that a little bit, but yeah, that was it was kind of on the back burner at that point. So
it's interesting that the desires and the passions that drive us the most at the core of who we are help permeate other areas of our life. Music is obviously very important to you, and it wasn't just a passion. It was a way. It was your identity, right? At one point, it was a way for you to not only express yourself, but it actually provided financially in some regard for you. How did transitioning, and I don't want to say transitioning, I would just say, how would implementing your love for music and still holding on to your love for music, but doing it more as a passion instead of a career, how did that influence your decisions as a business person?
That's a really interesting question. As far as from a business perspective, I think I think the biggest influence was being able to look back at that and say, as an example, my last full year of doing of touring and all that, I played, I think it was 150 something shows in 38 different states, and it was an independent guy, so I was having to do all the bookings, and I didn't have a booking agent, so it was a lot of logistics in there and stuff like that. And I remember it was the fall of 2010. I was playing at this one place, and I was literally thinking about something like totally off the wall. It was probably having to do with like getting engaged and where am I going to find a house, whatever. And I remember I hit a chord at the end, and I literally like played an entire song without even I wasn't even thinking about it. And
it was second nature at that point.
It was second nature. And I think what was interesting is like, I looked around and I was like, I love playing, but I don't know if I remember thinking, I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. This much. And so kind of what became, I couldn't articulate this at the time, but this is true for real estate, is to answer your question about how does it come back into business. I think what I realized was like, just because I love music doesn't mean that I need to do it as a job. Just because, and just because I love playing guitar, I love singing, like that sort of stuff, it doesn't mean that I'm going to love everything around music. So like I loved maybe playing the show, but I hated the before, the nerves. I hated the after. I didn't like after the show, where it was just like, I just want to go home, or you know what I
didn't
mean?
want to
Like
have to be on,
right.
and
I didn't want
see
to have
all
to
the
be on.
people that were excited to come and shake your hand and do all the things, right? The promos.
Sure. And the booking and the logistics of travel, all that kind of stuff. And so shifting forward to like say around 2015, 2016, we had a big shift in our team, and I pulled from music because I was thinking, I said something very similar to a friend of mine. I said, I think I'm going to get out of real estate. And he was like, why are you getting out of real estate? And I was like, man, I'm just done. I'm done with like, I'm always on. I'm like, I just can't put my phone down. Everything's an emergency. You know, people want to see a house here. I have a listing appointment at this time. I said, there's just, the time is just, and he said something powerful. He was like, well, you need to go back and figure out how you want to operate. Just because you don't like, you know, just because there's things in real estate you don't like, doesn't mean you don't like real estate in general. And I pulled from the music aspect of it, and remembering it's like, man, I still love music. Maybe I didn't want to be a musician for the rest of my life, you know, full time.
Right.
And so with real estate, it was like, okay, well, what do I really enjoy doing? And the reality was I enjoyed really everything that I was doing. But I didn't want to do all of those things at the same time. So it became okay, well, what are you best at? Like, what's your biggest value add? Like, what space? Just because I can show homes doesn't mean that it's gonna be the only thing that I do. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it was really helpful to figure that out, pull from music, but then be able to go, you know what, this guy's really good here. This guy's really good here. I'm really good over here. We can partner up, you know, empower them, empower this guy. They're gonna do better this way than they would on their own. I'm gonna do better than I would on my own. And so that was a pretty big shift at that time. And we moved from Denver at the time, was the peak of my career for brokerage at that time, and we moved to Austin with this new kind of team structure, and it was scary, but it worked.
That's amazing.
And honor the values.
You talk about how, in a way, what I thought I heard was a little bit of burnout, right? On both sides, burned out from the regular mundane. This is exactly how I do a show. These are the songs that I play, and I can do it without even thinking, and it's not challenging enough for me anymore. Same thing came about within real estate, where you're just like, man, I'm getting a little burned out here on this process. I've been there too. I spent most of my years in the business of healthcare, and it burned me out in many different ways. And I had to be creative on how to reinvent what I was doing to reinvent myself even, and try and highlight other areas of my expertise, and even bringing in other ways to create revenue that would make it exciting, right? And so talk to me how you transitioned in from, you know, just doing the regular deals in real estate, the flips and fix and flips, and then deciding, you know what, I want to create air in.
That's a long road that we probably don't have time for. I'll give some highlights for that, but you know, after we'd gone from we'd moved from Denver to Austin, you know, I was now kind of running a real estate team from a different state, and that was fun because I didn't know how to do it, and you know, we figured it out, and I made a ton of mistakes in the process. But at that point, I think because I wasn't I wasn't clear on the end goal. I was clear on values, but I wasn't clear on the end goal. And in 2016 and 17, I had more freedom, I think, than I've ever had in my entire life. And if I could, I say if I could go back, I'm glad things happened the way that they did. But I think
hindsight sometimes is 2020, but yeah.
Right. But then, if you can go back and change that, then you wouldn't go through the things that got you to where you are today. So it's like, I don't want to say I would change, but I think the difference now is when there's freedom in a day right now, I'm not looking for what's the next thing to do. And it's more about how do I go deeper with to get to that end goal, right? Instead of what's the next thing to start, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so with that freedom back in 2016, 17, I started a construction company. I ended up starting at one point a technology company, and started a brokerage and all these different things. And, COVID hit, and it was a really tough time, and, had all these things going, and it was too much. And when everything opened back up in COVID, it was miserable again, because it was just, you couldn't stop so many things coming at you. And, around that time, a buddy of mine that I'd met in Denver called me and said, "Hey, I want to go to lunch with you. I want to introduce you to a guy. We're starting a church in Liberty Hill." And so I went, met with him, and I was excited about it because the guy who was starting the church had started one in Killeen, Texas, and it had grown really well. It's doing really well today. And I've been joking with him for a few years, like, "Hey man, we're going to open up Georgetown, Liberty Hill." And so he finally did that, and I was really excited. We jumped in, we to be on the church plant team, and it was right in the middle of all of these things. Kind of trying to get out of some stuff, keep some stuff going, keep plates spent, all that. And what was really cool and very, very painful, very, very painful, was, and you could sense it. And I'm sure you've been there too, knowing what I know about you, but it was around this time, you could sense everything on paper looks really good right now, but something's going down. You know what I mean? And I don't know what it is.
I know that feeling, dude.
And
yes.
And so it was interesting because at that time I really started, I think it was in 22, made a commitment, all right, I'm going to start my day off with, this little, it's called the morning mindset. This guy, Kerry Green, runs it. He does it every day, and it's phenomenal. So I started doing that. And that relationship with Christ really started to grow. So it was right as these things, where you could sense it coming down, it was I was starting to build this relationship that I don't want to say I hadn't paid attention to, but I hadn't given near enough attention to. And that was 2.5 years ago. And in that time, I had one of my business partners decide he wanted to go a different direction, which meant that team, that stability that I had was going away. I knew it the second that he said that. And I had some other partners that were going through some really tough stuff themselves, and some of those things started going downhill. I had to get out of some relationships that were not good relationships. And that was a really tough thing to deal with. I had to step down from my position at the tech company when I didn't want to. And that was pretty brutal. And so there was just a lot of these things. I was trying to get out of my construction company at the time because there was too many cooks in the kitchen, and I just needed to get out of that. And so it was, and then all while trying to keep, these different plates spinning and things, and, but I think what's so amazing about that really last 2.5 years, and I say this because it's funny, if you talk to me, you'd probably think like, man, everything is going really, really well for that guy,
Yeah.
And the reality is like completely vulnerable. Like even like at this moment, like I'm not out of the woods yet on paper. But the goal has changed. And so it's, I read a book and I'm getting to Aaron, by the way. I read a book, it was New Year's Day, in 23. My cousin had given me this book called Leadership Not by the Book. And it was by, I think it was David Green, from founder of Hobby Lobby. Mm-hmm. And he talked about how everything, he talked about how they started, how they almost went bankrupt, and then he talked about how he basically said, you know what, I'm just a steward of this. Like I need to treat this as if it's not mine. Yes. And hold my hands open. And it was really powerful. And I had COVID and the flu at the same time, so I really couldn't do anything at that time. It felt like knives whenever I would breathe in. And so I was just read this book for literally 12 hours. And it was just a couple months later, I went into my other business partner who hadn't left. And I just told him, I said, man, I think I'm out. Like, yeah. And he's like, what are you going to do? And it's like, I think I'm going to go all in on just my short-term rentals. And I'm just going to do that. I've been wanting to do that. That's been my retirement job. And I said, I think I'm just going to go all in on that. And okay, so we left on good terms. He's still one of my closest friends. And we still do business, not directly together, but indirectly. I refer to him and things like that. And he's actually one of our clients. It's actually our first client. So I left that, and I was remodeling a duplex at the time. And I had one side with a property management company that I always use for short-term rentals. And at this time I'd gotten out of at one point I had over 40 long-term rentals. So I'd gotten out of all of those, and had acquired either land or properties in locations that we wanted to visit as a family that could make money, that sort of thing. Well, I had it rented out with this property management company, and it wasn't doing very well. My Colorado property that they were managing was not doing very well. And it's just like, why is this? We're in 2023. Like this should be doing better than it's doing. So like, well, maybe I can manage this myself and put some things together. I'm fairly tech savvy, and I tried that on the unit next door, this duplex, and immediately, it was between 35 and 45% more revenue. Like day one, no reviews, it did so much better day one. Next month, same thing. I'm like, this is such a great A/B test, right? Like duplex, same bed.
Yeah, let me try it out on my own.
And so all of a sudden, it's like, well, I'm going to try this in my property in Colorado. And immediately, like when I say immediately, the next month we had the biggest month that we'd ever had in the last 4 or 5 years. And so I was like, all right, something's here, Yep. And then so I have all these past clients that are investors, right? And I've, people around town and things like that. And like, man, are you struggling with yours? Like, I'm not getting bookings. And I'm like, no, I feel bad saying this, but I'm actually doing really well, And like, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm kind of doing this. I have this little algorithm thing. I have these automations. I have this and that. Like like, well, will you do that for me? It's like, no, I don't want to manage properties. That's not my fate. Like, I'm kind of just chilling, And I kept getting asked that, and finally, I kind of just gave in and decided, okay, well, we can do this, but before I start another thing, I need to make sure. Mission, vision, values, all those things. So we got that all done. And part of that was forced a nonprofit because part of what I had wanted to do was have these properties that make money, right, that we can go visit, but then also so that we can donate, we can give those nights away, vacations away to whether it's teachers or pastors or police officers. And so I was like, well, if we're going to do that, like, that needs to be a fundamental, part of our plan. Sure. And I found out that you can't just donate a room and get a write-off. So I was like, no, when I start a nonprofit now, okay. And I think what's so cool in that, so that's how we started. And so we started with my properties, and another client. We're in 30 something at this moment. We have a number of people coming on, which is great. But what's really cool is, I say really cool, right after I kind of burned the proverbial ships, if you will, and kind of no turning back, right? You burn the ships. It was I didn't know that this thing was going to happen, that was going to drain. Actually, several things happened that drained about 80% of our reserves. That I was planning on investing in the company, and hey, we can hang on for a year or two while this thing gets off the ground. And so I remember,
been there, buddy. I've been there.
Yeah. Well, it was the fall of last year. It was 23. I was in my wife's office, and I love this story. It was such an incredible morning. I just did my podcast devotional thing, and I was praying, and I started crying, like bawling, and it was like, I called my pastor and I said, man, I don't know, like I feel like, and on paper, everything that I have almost has been drained. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. I just started this freaking company like 4 or 5 months ago. Of course it's not making money yet. It will, I can see it. And I may be giving a property or two to the bank. And he was like, man, I'm sorry. And I was like, I'm not. And I was like, the reason I'm calling you is because I don't care. The reason I was crying because I was like, I have this peace. And I was like, because it's not mine. And so, and it was, I think, to be able to have that kind of peace in the middle of all of that, was so much more valuable than any amount of money could have been. Like, so I would take that piece over $1 billion. And I think what was so cool about that was it really put everything into perspective to where it was like, all right, I don't even know. I know what the goalpost is, but I'm not married to it. If I need to sell this, great. If I need to sell that, great. I don't care. These are all assets. They're chess pieces. Money's just another tool, just like a hammer. We need it. We need it, but like that's not the goal. And so I told my wife, I said, we might lose some property. We might, but all is good. Are you healthy? Because I am. So our daughters. Like, I mean, like everybody, everything is good. And so, with that, we've crawled and scraped, and it's been unbelievably hard, but it's also been fun at the same time. But there's purpose behind it, and I think this year we've tripled as far as the business is concerned, and we've actually been donating to our foundation with our profits, even though we don't have our 501(c) status from the IRS yet. But last week, I finally got our first, not nonprofit guest, but I've been working on this development to be able to donate. We have this first person that was able to book, and they're going to go stay there, and they're going to get away. And that was the purpose. And I think now having so much clarity on like not only where are we going, but like how we're operating, and making decisions based on what are the core values of the company. If they align, then it's a yes. If they don't align, doesn't matter what it is, it's a no. Has been so freeing.
Oh, everything you just said there, you took us through this journey of the entrepreneur. You really did. And the faithful, that right there, were you involved and you invited God to be a part of your decision making. I'm guilty of not inviting God into my business decisions on a regular basis. And I've been a lot better now, having gone through all of the things that I went through. Um, you mentioned you had to cut ties with some relationships. You had to really dig deep into the personal, into the internal, inside of what are your true core values, and that moment, which you I feel like you brought us into some sacred space here. So thank you for sharing that moment where you really had that answer from God, and it was just a rush of peace, that rush of peace that you felt in your heart, and you felt so happy and peaceful that you wanted to share that with your pastor, and for him to be, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm wanting to be there for you, and you saying, I'm not. I'm not sorry. I am relieved. I've just had this reality come to me that I'm a steward of these things, and I may fail often, but that's not defining me. It doesn't define me as a child of God. It doesn't define me as a human being. These things are tools for us to be able to get through this life, right? And
Yes.
and your family and your wife and your relationships are the very most important things that you can nurture in your relationship with God. I think that message is so important, Landon, because we get caught up. We get caught up in the everyday grind of the world. And when you have a little bit of money without the faith, then, and I'm not saying that I ever lost faith. I was practicing my faith all through the successes, but there was a time where I saw on paper everything looked so good, but my gut told me something's gonna crumble. And I was just going through the motions because I was pretty much trapped. I had so many business partners and so many things going at the same time simultaneously that I literally didn't know how I could walk away or get away from. I told my wife at one point during the height of all of the things that I was doing that I felt like I was a character on a stage that couldn't get off, that everyone was paying for, and everybody was depending on performing. And I literally was like, I am tired of performing. I need relief. I just don't know how to get it.
That's a great way to put it. Yes. Great way to put it.
And I feel like that's the story of so many entrepreneurs, because not only are we the founders and the CEOs, but we're the deal makers, we're the salespeople. We are making the things happen in the background, and to our own fault, I think we feel like if we were to step off stage for just one moment, that the show would stop. But what I've realized is that it doesn't. It continues. It's just different, and different sometimes is good, and it's okay.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think especially being entrepreneur, just like you, and every entrepreneur goes through this kind of stuff. But I think, one of the biggest shifts has been, there's been a number of shifts, but my relationship with money is different, right? Now it's a tool. It's not something to just store up, right? It's not the end goal. It's a byproduct of doing the right thing, right? It just comes. And so, which that's always been there, but the relationship with it in terms of what it represents has changed dramatically. So I think that's one thing. I think in this particular business, that what we are doing now is not what we started out to do, or we're not doing it the way that we started out doing it. And I think changing your relationship, especially as an entrepreneur, with the outcome, right? It's not, because we get so, here's the goal and it has to look like this, as opposed to here's the goal and we're going to get new data, new information. We're going to have to shift. And we've made some dramatic shifts. I don't think we're going to make many more dramatic shifts at this point. But instead of what would have taken me maybe a year or two to finally go, okay, we got to make this change. It was man, we need to make this change. Okay. We're doing that this week.
Yeah.
It's very, and not getting attached to these outcomes, right?
Yep.
And so there's that. And then really from a faith perspective, I heard this message. It was absolutely incredible. They talk about the guy who's like, man, I'm gonna have a big party. Go invite all my friends, and all of his friends said, one guy said, hey man, I'd love to come, but I just bought some land and I got to go check on it. And I was just like laughing when I heard that. I was like, that's me. I got land. I got to check on it. But then the next guy, he says, hey, I'd love to come, but I just got these oxen, and I got to go to the field and work them, whatever. I can't come. The next one, hey man, I just got married. Like I got a wife. I can't come. And the guy's like, okay, well then go invite these other people. Let me see if they'll come. But anyway, the point of that being, the land actually represents what you have, and the oxen actually represent what you do for a living, like your job. Like what do you do? And then the guy who was said I can't come because he's getting married represents like your identity. And so he put this together. I'll butcher it, but basically it's like, man, it's not bad to have stuff. It's not bad to have things. It's not bad to go work. Like you're supposed to work. You're supposed to get stuff. You're supposed to invest, all of those things. Your identity, your marriage, your family, those things like so important. Or who you identify, like a musician, right? Or this is who I am. None of those things are necessarily bad as long as they don't get in the way. And so that's been a very very powerful thing, and it's a good check, right? It's like if I go buy this property, because I'm impulsive, creative, impulsive. I got a little bit of ADHD, a little bit of bipolar, and so
I just bought a horse last week on a whim.
It was so funny. Yes, it was so funny. This is like literally 2 days ago. I was like, it was one morning. I didn't have a ton of stuff going on, and immediately I'm like, I'm going to go check and see what's on the market. And I was like, oh man, this looks like a really cool property. Like, and it was about 5-10 minutes into it. I was like, stop. That is not even close to going and helping you go get what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like that's going to get in the way of all these other things. So it really is a good check. And I think also like serving and starting, like being a part of a church plant, having to be there at 6 a.m., every single Sunday to set up and then tear it down, bring your music gear and set up, tear it down, like every weekend, there's something really powerful, I think, about that. And, this will probably resonate with you, because I said to my pastor one time, fairly early on, I said, man, what if we were able to pay somebody to come in here and do this? We could have this process. They could come set this up. It only costs this much money or whatever. And he just kind of looked at me and he goes, listen to the message today. And I was like, okay. And he got to this one point in the message. He was like, there's some people, he was talking about the lady who gave like a penny, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And he was like, for some people, it really is like, he's asking for your money, he's asking for your money. And he was like, and there's some of you out there who are using that, are hiding from that, or hiding with that, behind that. You're hiding behind because it's easier for you to write a check than it is to show up and give your time. And I was just like, okay, got it.
Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. And so I think what's really come out of that has been some amazing relationships, because you and I both know when you go through hard stuff with people, it builds those. But one of the overarching themes of the last couple of years really is being able to go through, being able to be happy, being able to have peace in the middle of all that stuff, but then also being able, with that peace comes, I think, you're able to discern, you're able to make decisions and think of it becomes clarity, right? And instead of going, how do I get out of this, right? And that being the question, I think that's the wrong question. And previous, storms or valleys, whatever you want to call them, because there have been plenty of previous, it's always been, help me get out of this. How do I get out? How do I get out of this? And the last couple of years, it's like, man, this is tough. What are you trying to teach me? What am I supposed to learn from this? Like, how is this going to benefit? Like, what's the lesson here? Because there's no such thing as growing pleasures, right? It's growing pains. So if it's painful, you're probably growing in some way, and there's a reason for it. So I think it's made it actually fun, as weird as that sounds, to go through some of this stuff, because you're like, man, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be learning through this, but like, this is hard.
Yeah.
But there's probably something really cool that's going to come from this, And so just having that mindset and choosing to have that mindset, as opposed to just getting me out of the pain. The pain's going to be there. The heart's going to be there. So
no, that reminds me so much of when Christ says, take my yoke upon you, right? When we're equally yoked. You talked about oxen earlier and how, that was representative of work. And, when oxen are yoked next to each other with the, they had these things that they would carry the weight and pull. And when Christ used that analogy of take my yoke upon you and I will give you rest, it's like, oh man, instead of me like, how do I get through this? Like you just said, it's like, how can I learn from you and walk beside you and be equally yoked in this experience so that I can come out better on the other side? Right.
100%. And it's so glad you brought that up. I'm going to send you this after this. Craig Rochelle, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's pastor in Oklahoma, but he has a leadership podcast as well. But he was talking about that exact thing, and he was struggling at one time with. He was like, "Man, I'm just got all these things coming at me." He's an entrepreneur as well. Mm-hmm. Like he not just a pastor, which I think most pastors are actually disguised as entrepreneurs. But anyway, he has another business plus his church, and he was talking about that. And he had gone to like a counselor to try to figure out, like, man, what do I need to get rid of, or what do I need to slow down, and the guy said, man, you're never going to stop. Like, you're not supposed to stop. And he brought up that verse, and he said, what he's saying there is like, he never said this is going to be easy. Hey, you're not going to have to work. Like, but there can be rest in work. So if you're doing it, like, just like you said, like equally, right? You can work really hard and have fun. It can be really hard and have fun. It can be restful, And so what this guy, Craig Rochelle, said, he's like, so people now, and so he's like, I love that answer. And it was right. And he said, now I tell people, and they ask me like, hey man, are you busy? And he's just like, oh yeah, man, I'm always busy. I always have a ton of stuff going on. He was like, but I'm not rushed. And I was like, man, that was like, okay, that's what it is. Like, I love having things going on. I love being busy, but I hate being rushed. And I think that was part of the rest, and I think we tend to, I certainly, one of the worst at this, it's like you start picking up all these other things without looking at that goal first, right? Saying yes to everything, instead of saying no to the right. And if you start getting aligned, then you start saying no to the wrong things, yes to the right things, and that's what creates that path based on whatever your talents and skill sets are. So,
absolutely. This has been such an uplifting conversation to have, and I know that the journey of an entrepreneur is not easy, and when we are intentional about involving and practicing our faith and putting our faith to work, it will lift us. There's a well-known scripture, right, that says faith without works is dead. And when we don't put our faith into practice, into work, and we don't take the invitation to equally yoke ourselves with God, then we're choosing to do it on our own, and we're choosing to put our faith on the sideline and pick it back up on Sunday morning. And we can all learn from that. And I think we all get in that cycle where sometimes we're Sunday morning faithful, but we need to be faithful every day of the week. And this conversation has been so uplifting. Landon, I think there's a part 2 in our future here, because I think we just barely started scratching the surface of of this conversation.
Happy to do it, man, for sure. And I think I would leave with if I had something, if I had one thing to be able to tell any entrepreneur, even if they didn't have, even if they were an atheist, I would tell them, my marriage coach said this to me, very smart guy. He said, look, you're talking about all these different things. This is what I was trying to figure out what the next step was. He was like, there's all these different things. Like you're a musician, you broker, investor, like there's all these different things that you can go do. He's like, outside of like being an NBA player, there's probably not a whole lot you can't do. And he was like, you can probably do a lot of different things. And he was like, the right question is, what must you do? Where must you succeed? If you don't succeed here, like wherever that is, that's what you need to focus on. And everything else can be delegated, or in your case, automated, delegated, automated, whatever, but like, where must you succeed? And that was a really, really powerful thing, because we, as entrepreneurs, get into that headspace of like, I have to wear all the hats. And you do for a minute, but don't keep all those hats on. So.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Landon. Appreciate you. Love your testimony, and I appreciate so much you sharing those words with us today. For those listening and watching, go to freshcourage.com, sign up for our newsletter. Also, I will link the link to Air In on this episode, along with, if I can find some link to your music, I'm going to throw that in there too, Landon, because I want people to be able to hear that. Thank you again so much, Landon Smith with Air In. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Have a good one. Thank you so much.